Now, White House Chief Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow. Larry, thank you for joining us, sir. Where do we stand on a stimulus package? Are we going to get one?
Well, the discussions are continuing, and the committee chairs in both houses are meeting, talking. Appropriations Committee, the Small Business Committee, taking a good long look at some pretty big numbers, and among them is the PPP business loan, small business loan program. So there's discussions going on, but there are also some considerable policy differences that have not yet been resolved. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't want to make a forecast, and I don't want to negotiate on the air.
Sure.
I'm just saying that the ongoing discussions, it's always better, and we will see. That's really the best I could do right now.
Yeah, and what are the policy differences? Even if you don't get into the actual numbers, what are the problems? Because I know the White House has certain priorities over what Nancy Pelosi is bringing to the table.
Well, look, I'll tell you some of the president's priorities, which have been his priorities for, I don't know, several months, going back to last summer. First of all, he'd like the direct mail assistance. He would like the PPP small business extension. That's very important. He would like some legislative redeployment of funds so that we can have unemployment assistance. You know, he acted and took a leadership view by executive order and put some more money, $300 into unemployment assistance, $100 from the states. But unfortunately, that money is going to run out. And we need some repurposing legislation from Congress for that and the small loans. We'd like to help airlines. I think that's very important. We'd like to help schools and COVID-related expenses and so forth. On the other hand, he has always been opposed to what he regards as a massive assistance plan to poorly managed states and local governments. And I think that is still a sticking point.
Yeah, and there is the possibility that the president and Nancy Pelosi might come to an agreement, but it could get bogged down in the Senate, correct? Because there get some signs from Mitch McConnell that maybe the GOP in the Senate might not go along with the big number.
Well, you know, I don't want to speak for Senator McConnell, but I will repeat what he has said. If there's a true bipartisan package, then he would be inclined to support it. And if it was a true bipartisan package that met Republican policy goals, he would be able to support it. I don't think that condition has yet been met, but I'll let Senator McConnell speak on that.
Okay. Have you talked to Mitch McConnell about that, the senator?
I personally have not recently, no.
Yeah, I was curious.
Secretary Mnuchin's doing all the negotiating for us, along with Chief Meadows, and Secretary Mnuchin will be on the phone for a lengthy conversation with Speaker Pelosi, so we'll see what happens.
Okay, what does a second term look like for the president? What's going to be a priority economically in the second term?
Well, I can tell you this, he is going to continue on his path of cutting taxes and regulations. Count on it. He is going to continue to support energy and fossil fuels. Count on that. And he's going to continue to make tough trade deals that are fair and reciprocal with other countries, and that includes China. So you can count on that. He will absolutely not raise taxes and regulations. And I want to say it's worth discussing. A new study out from the Hoover Institution at Stanford University just did a price out of Mr. Biden's policy proposals and his tax hikes. And what they concluded, these are smart people well known in the economics profession, the Biden tax hikes would basically take away $6,500 of family income from middle-class families. We built it up $6,500 over 3 years, more than 5 times what the Obama-Biden administration did in 8 years. The Biden tax cuts would eliminate the $6,500. They would cost the economy a loss of 5 million jobs, according to this estimate, and a loss of $2.6 trillion in GDP. That's roughly 10% of the economy. So, you know, there's a message of stagnation, recession, and pessimism. Mr. Trump, on the other hand, will buck for a middle-class tax cut probably some business tax cuts as well. We'll continue to deregulate across the board. His message is prosperity, growth, recovery, and optimism. The differences and the choices couldn't be clearer.
Yeah, then when you see something like Moody's, when they come out and say something like the economy would be better under Biden, how do you respond to that?
Well, I think I know that model, and I know the author of that model, and he's just on the demand side. He thinks government spending is just as important as tax cuts, all right? In fact, he doesn't like tax cuts. We, on the other hand, look at the economy through the lens of supply-side incentives, where if it pays more to work and invest, people will work more and invest more. We also look at demand-side incentives, as our rescue packages have shown. But you have to include the supply side. So when we look at Biden's package, for example, he would take 1/4 away from investors. All right? He would take 1/4 of the income away from small businesses. He would take 1/4 away, this is 25% in each chunk, from new depreciation allowances and the corporate tax increase that he is promoting. These are things that are antithetical to the supply side of the economy. They are anti-business, they are anti-growth, they're anti-entrepreneurship, and they're especially against small businesses. Remember, it's the small businesses that pay the top tax rates. And as I say, they would lose 25% of their income because of Mr. Biden's policies. The Moody's model has nothing in there to capture those crucial effects.
Yeah, over the next week, I think we're going to get numbers of the third quarter GDP, and they're going to be record-breaking, aren't they?
Well, I think so. You know, we've always said 20% growth in the second half. The Atlanta Fed is talking 35% growth in their GDP model for the third quarter. I think the private blue chip forecasters are saying now 29 or 30% for the third quarter. Look, the President has been saying we're in a V-shaped recovery. And it's a recovery from the pandemic, which was devastating. We're not all the way home yet by any stretch. But the economy is coming online, again, faster and stronger than most people thought. You look at housing, there's a phenomenal boom going on. You look at retail sales and consumer spending, there's a phenomenal boom going on. You look at auto sales, a huge recovery. New business startups and new business applications, consumer confidence and small business confidence. And inventories will have to be rebuilt. So this is a very strong, it looks an awful lot like a V-shaped recovery, and I think it's going to continue to spill over, not only in the fourth quarter, but in 2021, which could be a bang-up year, provided we don't have any devastating anti-growth policies.
Yeah, let's talk about election night. What's going to happen to the markets if there isn't an immediate answer as far as who's elected?
Oh, I can't predict that. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to do what-ifs. We think it's going to be a fair election. Of course, I believe it's not breaking news that President Trump's going to be reelected.
Right.
But in any case, I don't want to predict the stock market, and I don't want to predict longer votes or any of that sort of thing. I see no reason why we can't have a fair election, an orderly election, and let the voters decide.
Yeah. Do you think individuals should get a stimulus check, or would you focus more on businesses if you had to get down to something that both sides could agree on, including the GOP and the Senate? Who do you think should be the priority getting the money?
Well, look, as I said earlier, the president has always favored the direct assistance checks. Right. And he has always favored an extension of the small business payroll protection plan. I mean, there's $135 billion that went unspent. Now, that should be repurposed in legislation. That should be an easy one. I think both sides agree to it. The same is true for the unemployment assistance. The same is true for airlines. The same is true for the K-12 schooling with respect to COVID enhancements. This should have been done months ago. They're easy. There's bipartisan support. The problem is you've got a very sizable policy difference. One side has got a lot of political and ideological election year things that the other side doesn't want. And this is not the time for that. You know, giving out better health care or welfare checks to illegal immigrants, for example. You know, I'm perfectly happy to have that discussion. I don't happen to favor it personally. The president doesn't either. But we don't have to have that discussion now. That has nothing to do with the economy or with COVID. So you see, there's a bunch of those things that have to be resolved. Thus far, they have not been.
Yeah. In a second term, would you favor infrastructure spending? You know, supposedly when Obama was elected, there was a stimulus package for shovel-ready. It didn't happen like that. You and I both know that. But there is some receptiveness, it seems, in Wall Street at least, to maybe some stimulus spending, especially if it comes to infrastructure. Would you support that?
Well, the president always supported infrastructure spending, always. Bridge, roads, tunnels. We have already had several executive orders to reduce environmental permitting time to less than 2 years or even less than that. We've had executive orders on pipelines, clean water, various EPA overzealous regulations. And by the way, carbon emissions are falling as natural gas rises. It's a clean burning fuel. It's a good story. We have really the lowest carbon emissions of any of the signers on the so-called Paris Climate Agreement. So the president has already been working on that. He would welcome an infrastructure bill. He's always favored it. We just were never able to get bipartisan support for it.
Do you have any message for Nancy Pelosi?
I don't have any messages for anybody. Bob Sellers, this is the first time you and I have talked in about 5 or 7 years.
Right. Well, I appreciate you joining us, Larry. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best.
Be sure and say hello to my pal Chris Ruddy, if you would. Please.
I will do that for sure. He's the big boss here, so I will pass that along. Thank you so much, Larry.
He's a very dear friend. But you guys have to pay more rent because you're out here, you have no ceiling over your setup, and you're almost on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Okay.
And I know Chris likes to ride in high style, so I think you have to pony up more in order to get a better setup.
I'll pass that along to him and tell him it came from you. So thank you so much.
He'll appreciate that.
Okay,
My pleasure.
You. Larry Kudlow.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.